Welcome to Beers with Contractors. We're cracking a cold one and taking a deep dive into the foundations of your business, pun intended, to unearth the strategies, techniques, and insider knowledge that can take your contracting business to the next level. So, grab your favorite beer, pull up a seat, and let's have a chat about the nuts and bolts of the construction industry.
So, Dylan,
Will,
we made it.
finally here. Long road.
We are finally doing this.
The podcast.
No, it's like that Kansas song, To the Point of No Return, right?
Yeah, we can't look back now.
Our family is just going to regret this moment. You know, hopefully we're still doing this in a few years and we're not in a database or the tabloids or something like that, right?
And maybe our family will still be listening in a couple of years and haven't disowned us.
Yeah. Well, Beers with Contractors, right? So I'm here as the contractor, right? And you're obviously your shirt, the flannel you're trying to represent.
I'm just a model, really, for contracting. I looked at a few magazines. Everyone wears flannels, so I just assumed this is what I was supposed to wear for the podcast. But I guess hoodies will do for you.
Yeah, it's hoodie weather outside. You're a model, but no, you're really a hand model. So you're a contractor. You just play one on television, and you look good for the part, right?
Thank you. And part of the hand modeling is having a beer, since we are Beers with Contractors.
Yeah.
And so I think we should probably pop open a beer.
Yep. And don't worry, I'm already there.
But I'll just take a drink.
Well, because of all of our listeners, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Let's just kind of give a brief overview of why the hell are we even here? So, you know, obviously we are both very passionate about the contracting world and kind of pushing the status quo and trying new things. But we also want to be able to give back, pay it forward a little bit to some of the people that have helped us, because I don't know a single contractor anywhere that hasn't gotten somewhere with the help of somebody else. So one of the things we will always do is we will promise you guys we will always have a guest, but then we'll also try to bring some value and some topics, and then also give some kudos. These are unpaid sponsors, but our koozies, of course, are represented by companies that have helped us. So I've got SiteOne. They provide our landscaping supplies, and they have been awesome. Who do you have?
I have Soto Flooring. Soto's just a good friend of us and Mike Soto, and does great work in flooring.
Cool. So first topic. So we've been hearing a lot about how the labor market's just been a mess in construction and nobody wants to work or people can't find people that want to work. And you actually shared with me kind of a neat article the other day. And I totally did the man thing where it was like I read the text and then was like, yeah, I'll read this later. And then I never read it.
I thought that you had read it, and I felt really good about myself because I was sharing something that I thought you liked. But okay, well, basically, I'd send you this message. X, formerly known as Twitter, Oli Elon, why not rebrand it as X.com? And he wants it to be this platform of basically everything. And so he's trying to reinvent Twitter to not just be like little tweets, right? They want it to be a business center and an information platform, a news site. And now they actually want to include recruiting. And so different companies on X will be able to, with a paid sponsorship, a monthly paid sponsorship, actually post job openings to X. And in that way, you could have at the top of your feed, hey, this is a really high priority posting for us. And then there's other benefits of, you know, there's literally billions of people that could get impressions from this. And so you can actually amplify those postings. So when you have a job opening, you could say, hey, I want this to be amplified in X way, and they'll do it. And Elon, I think, is interestingly pushing the envelope of kind of a status quo in the last decade or two. Everyone thinks of business websites. They think of LinkedIn. They think of like Indeed, ZipRecruiter. And basically, Elon Musk is like, those are all disgusting. He's like, they just look kind of like sterile sometimes, and he's like, I just wanted to re-energize it. And I think it's just a fascinating way that he's literally taking a social media platform and turning it into a corporate recruiting platform.
Which is genius in its own right because people are already there on the platform. But I mean, you can attest to this. I mean, how much do we spend a month on Indeed just trying to recruit and find people? And I think a lot of contractors, they forget that. Like if you're looking and recruiting, you kind of need to spend some money, a lot like marketing, to find people to come to your business. But what do we spend a month?
Yeah, it really depends on how many positions are open, but it's in the thousands. I mean, it's easy to spend $3 or $4 grand for our kind of medium-sized company on job openings just on that one platform. And when you think about the return on that, if you could do that through your own social media platform, you could have a following of people that may already love what you do or your products or believe in what you believe in, and then just continue to cascade that. It's a really great idea for Elon and the X team.
I'm pumped for Elon because nothing would make me happier to organically find people than continue to give my money to Indeed. Because honestly, when we're looking for people working in our company, we're trying to communicate with them on a platform that they are already using, right? And the fact is, most people looking for a construction job is not running around like checking Indeed like a social media. And they're only going to that platform when they're notified or pinged by an employer or a potential job. And then it's really difficult because the barrier of entry. I mean, it's so frustrating to see when we need people in this industry and somebody applies, and then what they do is they have to clear like 15 questions. Like, I don't remember what day and month I worked at that grocery store when I was 14. Like, I don't need to know that information. Do you need that information in HR? It just blows my mind.
Yeah, and those barriers to entry mean that you're not hiring, right? So as much as you can kind of diminish those barriers, not in the sense that you don't want to hire someone blind, but at least get them in the door for an interview. And I think you make a really great point, Will, on going to where the people are. A lot of us have probably done paper applications, and paper applications are just a thing of the past, right? And where are people? On social media. So why wouldn't a social media platform try to take a step like this?
Isn't it funny, the thought of the old paper application? It's like the Western Union telegram. Like, are we still doing? But yeah, unfortunately, in the construction world, we do. And it's just like, man, we got to change that.
It'll probably always be here because you're going to have that one person that walks in the door, but it just duplicates processes. You know, you're probably going to scan that in or take it somewhere else after it's done anyways.
If you think about the evolution of it, do you ever think we'll get to the point where we just don't have pen and paper in offices? It's like you're just walking around doing the Macarena looking for a pen, and it's like nobody has it because it's all digital, right?
If you would have asked me that question a year ago, I would have been like, later on in life, but not anytime soon. And then this whole like blow up of AI and everything is just like, you could record this, it'll transcribe it. Like there will be a point when something wearable that is on us just documents everything about our day and puts it all in some other database somewhere.
Well, I just think this is so cool because hiring is obviously probably the biggest part of our job when we try to grow and scale a company. So I'm sure a lot of people read that article. Of course, I read every word, just to be clear.
I can see it in your eyes. Yeah.
No, that people, they typically are afraid of change and new products. And especially in the construction world, we are trying to attract talent. We're trying to educate, obviously, because a lot of people applying to jobs, they view construction as unsafe. So it's like, how do we break down those barriers? So I look at an article like that and see, you know, X diversifying their service to their users. I think it's a win. I mean, I think they could put a really big dent in Indeed's and ZipRecruiter's market share. And it's funny, like 10 years ago, we didn't have Indeed. So it was like, when that came on, it was like, well, no, we go to monster.com, right? Remember when monster.com was like the big deal?
I was in high school, so I wasn't using it a whole lot like you were, Will, but I did know about it. Yeah.
Listen, don't let our listeners know our age. Like, if, for all they know, listening to my voice, I'm 22 years old, right? Yeah, successful contractor, 22 years old. I'm just passionate about how do we find people? How do we communicate with them? How do we try to get better at it? And I try not to be the old, call it full disclosure, I'm a millennial, but I try not to kind of coin into those generational kind of communication stereotypes. And I just think it's like, hey, this is the future. We just got to get with it. So
yeah, we got to get with it. And I also think there's something to be said to incremental change. Yeah, most construction companies may not be diving into they're not early adopters. They may not jump on right away, but they should be able to look and see this is something that's coming down the pipeline. This is something that will add value to my business within time, and I shouldn't be afraid of it. And the later you do come, the odds are you're going to be behind someone else that, hey, they took a gamble and they just tried it out. So yeah, I am excited for the future of hiring in that regard. I will also say, Will, the amount of time that we're kind of just drawn to the same platforms, it's just so much easier when we're already there. And, you know, things like social media, when it comes to recruiting, it's just going to where the people are. Mm-hmm. You know, people aren't always going to come to us. Social media is coming to them. They're excited. They're engaged. They're having conversations. And we just get to go join in on them. It's just this huge marketplace. It's this huge town square. And now we're talking about our company.
Well, hopefully here in 2 years, you're not complaining about whatever we're being charged through X on our recruiting. So yeah, let's figure out the price. Was the price points in the
There is a
article?
price point. It's like $1,000 a month, I think, right now. But right now, so yeah, it's a third of the cost of an Indeed for us, if you will. But who knows? As they build out new features, the sky could be the limit for them. I have no idea.
What is cool? Because a good friend of mine owns a construction company in Oregon. They literally interview people through Snapchat
Whoa,
for phone screening.
that's innovative.
Yeah, and we've got another good friend of mine in Texas. Like their concrete crews are just putting out awesome content on TikTok, and it's just I'm never good at that. I still have a MySpace page, so it's like, is that still a thing? Like AOL, right? But I see these companies that are just rather than complaining about it, they're getting on board. It's pretty cool. So speaking of getting on board,
Yeah.
let's introduce our first guest. It's kind of like that saying, like voted best business by the owner and their mom, right? And it's like, so obviously our first guest, we're going to have plenty of shade being thrown around today, probably.
Probably. It's not Will's mom, but it is the mother of Will's children.
Yep. So it is our guest today. I got to give a little credit. Number one, finally gave me the opportunity to create our studio up here in the upper deck at the Vesta offices, which we're excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hear a lot of background noise, that's because we are literally over top of my warehouse. You'll probably hear a forklift clanging around on some things, trucks backing up, orders coming in, people knocking on the door, but that's just kind of the ambiance of it. But our guest today is actually somebody that's been in the business going on about 18 years. And we got to give credit where credit's due. Won 3 separate CEO of the Year awards.
Wow.
Created a business that went from 0 to 15 million in revenue in 6 years. Serves on the board of a nonprofit and has the most handsome husband of all
We were
time.
waiting for that one.
Yeah.
You're like, where's this going to land? How's he going to land the plane?
But our guest today is the lovely Sydney Blake. Sydney,
Sydney.
Hello.
say hello to our listeners. Let them know that all those credentials are accurate and correct, including the last one, right?
Yep. And so, hello, my mother-in-law and father-in-law listeners. Really excited to be here.
That's funny. So I do have to give credit where credit's due. So we have some listeners that are big fans of Traction and EOS. Just to set things clear, by definition, Sydney is our CEO, but in the EOS or Traction sense, that is our integrator. And her job is to really make the trains run on time, make sure that people are held accountable to their roles. So, obviously we've been married going on 20 years, and boy, that's been a roller coaster. But why don't, rather than me describe all of your background and your history, why don't you talk about how, like, you got into construction and how the hell we got into this wild world of contracting and things like that?
Hey, so my parents had a small construction business. And so I grew up very much knowing that my father was out at customers' homes in the evenings and on holidays. And then when I had the opportunity to make one of my life's best decisions and marry Will, your father was a contractor. And so when we were first married and broke, raising a child, we both got into our respective industries. I helped my father do home inspections. We were helping your father build. Kind of morphed into moving to foundation repair specialty. And I know that as a child, that was never something I thought about. I want to own a foundation repair company when I grow up. But I think I speak for both of us when we found out exactly how much that can improve someone's life, taking care of their concerns with their home, as well as grow and lead the team members below us.
Yeah. So just to give our listeners a little bit more information, because, obviously women in the construction workforce, that's a minority, right? A lot of people, they think like, okay, this is like just one person, a solopreneur. So I want you to describe a little bit more of the depth of your role. Like how many employees, how many people do you manage? All of that. So people can understand like, hey, there is so much talent out there, specifically with women in the workforce, that I think a lot of them think of just being smaller companies, but you've kind of broken the mold there. So describe that a little bit, and then we'll dovetail with some more questions.
So you're almost talking about two different things. So from an integrator CEO standpoint, We have 3 locations with Vesta. Oklahoma City was the first to be opened in 2017, and we have approximately 50 employees at this location. Arkansas was the next to open in 2018, and we have approximately 34 at that location. Correct. Okay, 34
Yeah,
at
that's
that
correct.
location. And then Texas is our newest location, just opened up in the beginning of 2022. And with our production manager we just hired down there, super excited to have on the team. And the sales reps, we have 13. And from an integrator CEO standpoint, I manage a team of 5 others besides myself. And so human resource manager, operations manager, accountant, marketing manager, and it's helping them lead their teams. I want to have relationships with every single one of those 80 plus employees. And so I've had the pleasure of getting to know some of our most tenured employees like Bob Bessels, and, really just seeing him grow through the years. Trevor Stringer in Arkansas and him getting engaged, and to Danny, Will. And it's just been great to have those relationships and see our employees and their families grow as well at times. So it's 2 different things that I think are really why I come to work every day.
You mentioned having skin in the game, and actually, for listeners, where we're at in our kind of podcast booth, you can oversee some of the Vesta Foundation Solutions work trucks, and on the side of the truck is Sydney's face. What does that mean for you as, a family-owned company that your face is on the side of the truck? People are going out really under your name and your image. What does that mean for you in terms of legacy and just appearance to the public?
I actually did not want my face.
Okay.
Trucks. I am the behind the scenes person, so it's actually very awkward for me to even be talking. If anyone knows my husband, he's the speaker of the couple. Thank you for doing that in our 20 years of marriage.
As I move to my second beer, Dylan.
I'm not far behind.
It's scary. It's a trust, and it's part of the risk of being an owner. There are a bunch of great leaders that I know out there, but to be an entrepreneur, to put your own reputation, security, and everything on the line, it's scary. I mean, it is a leap of faith in every sense of the word. And so some people can push and lead and manage really well, but the risk behind the scenes of, personally guaranteeing all the debt, it's just a different sacrifice. Yeah, it's just a different risk. And so I think it's just really important to, some people are like, I want to go start my own business, and they don't really think that through.
Well, that's kind of neat. We opened with Gino Wickman writing a book called Traction. He also wrote a book called Entrepreneurial Leap, which he defines that the reason so many businesses fail is because there's so many people that are becoming entrepreneurs that really shouldn't be entrepreneurs. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because we're both, I think everybody in the room and many of our listeners are fans of Gino Wickman's work, but we'll get to some of more of the better questions about working with a spouse. It'd be better for our counselor here, Flannel Dan over here, to ask. But, many of our listeners, like we're a big company, but a lot of our listeners may be anywhere between 300,000 to 2 million in revenue. So, what type of advice on scaling an organization would you give to people like that, especially in the fact of knowing like there's credit issues, there's risk involved, there's staffing up, like from your experience, because we've been doing this a long time. But what I think you and I would get different advice. So what would be your advice to the listener?
I know we would give very drastic advice because you are the glass half full, optimistic, best case scenario, rosy colored glasses. I am the pessimistic brake pedal. So I think when we give advice, we have to give it shared. When you open your own business, whether that be a painting contractor, a veterinarian's office, an accountant's office, no matter what it is, it's because you love doing it. And if we limit this to mainly contractors, you're really good. You have your electrical license and journeyman's license. You have your plumbing license. You're really good at building, trim carpentry, whatever it be. But you really have to understand that if you want to go into for yourself, what you'll be doing the least is what you love. And
Hmm.
instead, you're going to be learning how to read a P&L, to make a P&L, how to market your business, how to hire for your business, sell more business. And so at a certain point, you're every hat in your company. And so you have to be able not to be great at everything, the jack of all trades, master of none, but you have to be able to do each of those in order for your business to get off the ground. And then as you hire, my advice is to hire what you hate doing the most soon. And you hire someone that is better at it than you. You need to make sure you are getting advice from other people on hiring that can interview, because you need to be able to call someone out on BS if they actually don't know what they're doing and they're interviewing for it. But you hire people that can take over what you hate doing the most. And that would be my advice. Don't abdicate, though.
Do you think that it's interesting because in terms of whatever you want to call it, for what you said, Sydney, that you're kind of giving up what you're passionate about, because as you rise in the hierarchy and the org chart, you're not going to be on the front lines. Do you derive a sense of like fulfillment from the fact that, yeah, you may not be the one that's actually going out and installing your products, but you're the one that gets to teach, to educate, to train, to form? Is that a piece where the fulfillment of the solopreneur, the owner operator is, or is it more of just like, nah, you're just letting go of the vine and you're moving on to a completely different stage, and that's just one of those things that you mourn the loss of?
I would say both.
Okay.
And neither. A mature person that's able to run a company, and I say mature not from an age standpoint, but just, I've seen 18-year-olds be great entrepreneurs, and I have seen 60-year-olds be terrible entrepreneurs. So it's a maturity, understanding, and mindset. So, for instance, I love the administrative employee leading side. Like, that's what, I've gone to school for. That's what I've done the most. So it's my 10,000 hours of being able to master it. And I do less and less of that some days. Being able to still find joy in it because I can teach it is just changing your mindset so that you don't get down into the pit of despair or burnout or anything like that. So you look at things a different way. That's the people that go farther in life than others that just, complain with what they're dealt. And sometimes people open businesses and grow them so that they can get mailbox money. Again, no right or wrong. It's just what your personal preference. And so if someone is starting a business in order to hire a bunch of people to do it in your absence, then that's what you grow to do. There was a really great book that Will made me read when we first opened Vesta. And I'm going to butcher the title of said book, Build to Sell.
Built to sell.
Great book. So I highly recommend it because it talked about all the ways to grow your business in order to get the most return out of your investment. Doesn't mean you have to sell, but it's better to have options because some people run their business to where they don't have options. And that's really what you want to do, whether you want to stay in it or not. You want to build it, be profitable so that if something does happen or your life changes and your goals change, that you can pivot.
By the way, great book, Built to Sell. It's a fable about a gentleman that owns a graphic design firm, I believe, that ends up taking on a coach and getting his business to the point where he ends up selling it for millions and millions of dollars. But yeah, I think that's the message is even if you don't plan on selling, build it that way because that's what creates scalability, right? So now one thing that I think you could agree on, Sydney, is most entrepreneurs are not good leaders. So when we talk about bringing on people and scaling and things like that, you gave a great metaphor before that I'm a gas pedal, you're a brake pedal. So what have you found specifically for the people that are, well, for example, building and scaling a business, and then all of a sudden they're just bringing on people that are like them rather than actually building a diverse team? Because you've done a very good job, specifically in the last 3 years, creating one of the most diverse teams I've ever seen. And I think that is where most contractors forget, like, hey, when you're bringing on key people, they don't have to be from construction, right? Especially in a high-level decision-making role. In fact, actually, I would counter that a little bit. Like, we have people in the field that didn't come from construction, some of our best employees. But would you mind elaborating on how to create a strength and diversified team with all sorts of different skills and traits, because I think that's a piece of the puzzle that's missing in our world that our listeners would want to hear about.
I think those are really good points. And I'm going to start off by, I'm still learning. So with that, because I think everyone needs to be reminded every so often. So I'm still investing in myself to learn and remember that and grow my team better. And so you always hear also, like, you want to hire someone you want to go have a beer with. I have hired people, and I think some of my people right now, if we were not working together, I could just see us like going out to games every weekend, trivia nights, but it hinders growth when everyone is the same. Because if you wanted a yes person, that's great. Your business will eventually fail, because it's about maintaining fourth corner conversations. And fourth corner is just an honesty. Like, I think the person I am most honest with is my father. Had some health issues and he refused to go to the doctor, and I hold medical power of attorney, and I threatened to enact it and get him a home health nurse like Kathy Bates from Misery if he did not go to a doctor. It's that level of honest truth out of love. And I think that's where this team is best. The best team I've ever with is because we can tell each other, hey, you really messed up. But I know that wasn't your intention, and we need to get better at this, and we can have those conversations. So it comes from being different enough to pull from those experiences, because that's how you get past all of those.
I think just about the opposite of having a yes person on your team is having your principal business partner be your spouse. Because I would assume it's not always just yeses. And I would assume that probably those no's also carry home. There's the work-life balance that comes into the mix of it. So you've been working with Will as your spouse for a number of years now. What is that like in terms of owning and operating a family business when it's with your spouse?
It is not for the faint of heart. There are some points of working with your spouse that I think it made our marriage stronger. It got us through some rough times. And, Will is absolutely my best friend, and I trust him. We moved across the country, didn't know a soul, and landed here and opened a business from zero. And at no point was I ever petrified, because I knew Will would succeed, would work. And then there are some that make it more difficult, because it's hard to step out. You have to be extremely intentional about, I am talking to you as a wife. I am not talking to you as a co-owner. I want to vent about my horrible boss at work. I don't want you to fix it. And just being able to communicate and be intentional with how you're talking. There's a great video. It's not about the nail in the head. I share it at least 12 times a year. I do not need you to pull the nail out of my head. I just need to vent and get this off my chest. And I can tell, like, Will's thinking, like, oh, I got to solve this problem. No. I'm not asking you to solve. I just need to vent.
I'm just sitting here quiet. I'm gaining my points, right? Like, I just don't want to end up on the couch. But no, I think there's some truth to that, because a lot of business owners, specifically contractors, they are family or spousal businesses. And the fact is, most businesses ran by a husband-wife team, they have a higher degree of success because the personalities, they complement one another. They're typically willing to put in more effort for less pay, because it's kind of, call it household or global pay. But the Achilles heel of that is the price, or call it the consequences to the marriage, right? And it's funny, she's mentioning this stuff and I'm taking notes like, yeah, that's actually pretty good. Because even I forget it as business owners, we just want to fix a problem and move on, right? But it's a moving target. It's almost like a lifestyle that has to be just constantly kept in check. And Sydney, you mentioned, like, hey, are you talking to me as a business owner or a spouse? Like, I have to be reminded about that like every other week. And then let's just talk about, now let's introduce kids into it. And, well, who's taking little Jimmy to soccer practice? And, who's going to the parent-teacher conference? And who's, going to work on payroll tonight? Like, you use this statement called work-life balance, and Sydney, you've got a kind of a unique spin on this because, which I really liked, by the way, about work-life integration. And I think that's really powerful. If we've got any business owners listening to this that are actually married to their business partner, I think this is something that we were fed a lie about work-life balance. Dylan, you may disagree, but I would love, Sydney, to hear your kind of explanation of what work-life integration is and, how important that is to not only owners, but just employees in general.
I honestly think that's changed a lot in the last few years. I feel when I first started using that buzzword, work-life integration, it was mainly to say I work harder and I'm sacrificing my family in order to do it. But it's integration, so it's okay. And that was back when I was an employee. I wasn't, just to be 100% clear. But when you're dealing with your marriage, and by the way, again, not trying to say I'm an expert, learning all the time. In marriage, you are not managing your spouse. You are not growing a business with your spouse. It is you are holding yourself accountable to do what you said you were going to do and follow through. So I'm less naggy. A wife now. I am the only person that knows how to unload the dishwasher in my house, apparently.
Really throwing me under the bus here. Like,
That's
I'm
all right.
not that bad, right?
No. I'm just using those as examples, but that's really the difference. And I think that's made our marriage better in the last 2 years is I'm honest with you if you do. Like, hey, actually, no, it's in the middle of the rain. And I'm like, no one took out the trash cans. I'm not going to hold Will accountable as a husband. I'm going to communicate with him if I'm displeased, but I'm only accountable for myself, so I can only control what I can do. And I just make sure to be a great wife to him every day.
Yeah. To me, it echoes a lot of like what, personal relationships and professional relationships. There's this truth for both of them that like, if you hold something too close to your chest that you don't like about the other person, you're just going to resent them. Right. And like the more honest you can be, the more straightforward you can be with that person, the better they're going to perform or the better they're going to behave or the better they're going to interact with you or other people. And yeah, so obviously that makes a lot of sense inside your personal relationship with each other. But then professionally, I just think of that like that's what accountability in management is like. And, you have to talk to your people. Otherwise, you're going to resent them all. And trust me, no employee likes to be resented. They'll either walk or they're going to like quietly walk and just not perform.
Yeah, if they're not getting feedback and if you're not having discussions with them on their growth and their future plans and all of that, they will leave you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny you say that because in the absence of information in a marriage or an employment, you come up with your own truth, right? And this concept of, rather than just assuming I know what Sydney's thinking, and it's silly. I haven't done this in a while where I actually ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with our marriage? And if it's anything other than a 10, it ain't good.
It's a good bar. Yeah, that's awesome.
We forget to ask the same exact thing with our employees. It's like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, how happy are you with working for us? And actually, I'm sorry, you do that, Dylan. What you call it a net promoter score for an internal net promoter score, where you literally ask employees that, which I didn't come up with that. I think you and Sydney came up with that, which I thought was so cool. But so, Dylan, we want to end every episode with some good, awesome question that we can ask every guest, and it'll be the same question in every episode. And you know how I am. Like, I love to screw things up so bad that I can brag about it. If you're going to really screw it up, when you own and run a business, it's just like you kind of become the king of the screw ups. I wish they do have a trophy at the end of the year. It's called taxes. It's like, hey, you're the king of the screw ups. And sometimes you either pay taxes or anyway, we can go into that in another episode. So what is the one question we want to ask every guest? And we'll start with Sydney before wrapping up every episode.
Yeah, I think you queued it up. I mean, we've had some screw ups. We've had times when we've fallen on our faces. What was sort of the king of that for you, or one that you think was really big or pivotal in your time at Vesta Foundation Solutions?
My biggest screw up that I can brag about?
Yes.
I do have to mention how ridiculous the question is. You are asking someone to be extremely humble and admit a mistake.
Okay, so if you were listening to this show and you could prevent somebody from making a mistake that you made that could help them in their business, what would it be?
So, a mistake or error I made that is so huge I could brag about it. It's funny, when you asked me to think about what I would say, it was actually as a parent. It was not as a business owner, just to be clear. Okay, so we had a past employee that was with us for, I think, going on 3 years. And this employee had a significant other that we met 4 separate occasions during many events. And I had to get another employee to go introduce themselves. That's why I'm very intentional, because I know, like, if someone's like, hey, guy, you don't know their name. I know exactly, like, my dad has no idea who he's talking to. And so I've been very intentional about really remembering the names so that when I see that person at the picnics or the kickoffs or whatever event we're having, that I know by name and I can talk to them one-on-one. So that was probably the one that's lasted the longest as far as fixing it and making sure I don't do it again. And if any employees are listening to this and come try to trick me, I'm walking away.
Well, so this has been cool. And I mean, we talk to dovetail with that. We talk about that all the time. Like the table stakes for employee engagement are like knowing birthdays, knowing anniversaries, knowing spouses' names, knowing kids' names. Like those are like the pillars to just basic relationships that managers typically just aren't really good at facilitating in their day-to-day work. And I say managers, owners as well, that we just got to get better at. So it's interesting you give yourself like grief over that, but you know, you see it as something valuable and that employee's a good employee. And it's like, all right, well, I got to get better. You don't, go kick the dog and get upset about it. But tons of cool things coming out of this. So first off, we got to talk a little bit about how Elon Musk is changing the recruiting world. Tons of good books. I mean, we talked about Traction, Built to Sell, Entrepreneurial Leap. Got some awesome feedback and some inspiration. Thank you for being on the show, Sydney.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And I hope that as you listen to this, you learn a little bit more. If you're interested and you know us, feel free in the comments to list out your company. We love to pay it forward, as we mentioned with our koozies here. Also, any topics that you want to learn more about. We have upwards of 26 guests on the roster right now, and we're really excited. So thank you for listening to another episode of Beers with Contractors. So we'll see you next week.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.